I'm Jeff Davis, taking you on the wine road. In today's segment, I travel to Dry Creek Valley in Sonoma County to chat with Ted Seghesio. I've been meaning to talk with him for quite a while, as Seghesio Family Vineyards was the first wine club my wife and I joined when we were still living in Arizona. Ted is the fourth-generation winemaker and now general manager of the family that has been growing grapes and making wine since 1895. The topic that inspired me to finally reach out to Ted is their flagship wine, Zinfandel, a varietal which, according to the June 30th issue of Wine Spectator, has been experiencing some exceptional vintages here in Northern California since 2012. If you love Zinfandel or want to learn to, the 2012, 13, and soon-to-be-released 2014s are ones you should put on your list. If there's one thing the Seghesios know, it's Zinfandel.
Yes, well, Zinfandel has always been first and foremost for my family, going back 5 generations. Great-grandfather Eduardo planted Zinfandel in 1895. That's where we started our beginnings of our family business. And we still make wine from that 121-year-old vineyard. It's our home ranch, Zinfandel. And through the years, whenever my family had enough money in the bank, we bought land. And whenever we bought land, we planted Zinfandel. That just seemed to be the grape that was most suited for this area. And long history with Zinfandel, going back to the Gold Rush era. And also what's really exciting about Zinfandel to us, and I think most Zinfandel producers, is it's pretty exclusive to California. And we don't have the French or the Italians or the Germans or any other old world country competing with Zinfandel, because they simply don't make it. So it gives us a lot more of an opportunity worldwide to sell Zinfandel.
I read in the Wine Spectator article that you believe the 2013 vintage is the best you've seen in your career.
Well, we have had a lot of good vintages.
In 5 generations of
in 5 generations, we've had some not so good vintages also. But a long time ago, we exhausted our estate grape supply to owner to bottle. So many years ago, we started sourcing growers. And today we have about 45 growers, but our grower list, it's been a constant evolution of seeking out the growers that farm according to our specifications and grow great Zinfandel. So over the years, we've called out the inferior growers that didn't really farm according to our specs. So the grower list, every year, it gets better and better. We get better quality food from our outside sources. And 2013 was exceptional for us in that we can control everything but the climate. And 2013 was exceptional in that the summertime temperatures had really significant diurnal swings to where the highs and lows differed up to 40 to 50 degrees. So it could be 95 during the day, which is plenty warm. But nighttime it could get down to the low 50s, high 40s, and that really allows the fruit to ripen slowly and gradually on the vine and develop flavor. And that's the nighttime cooling is really significant.
And did the short spurts of rain we had in the December prior and a couple during the spring in March, but that was about it. Did that help at all, do you think?
In 2013, the mid-spring rains, like March and April, we got just enough to get us through. And through the 4 to 5 year drought that started in 2011 or 2010, we think that the rain gods have looked down upon the California landscape, and they see that Napa and Sonoma make the best wine, arguably, and so we get rewarded with the most rain, because it seems like the Pineapple Express at Hawaii rips right through Napa and Sonoma counties. Whenever California gets rain, we've gotten the bulk of it. So it's been difficult in all of California for certain, but in North Coast here, we've been pretty lucky in that we've had just enough rain to get through every vintage, to where we haven't had really severe dehydration of the vines or wells running dry or ponds that we drip irrigate running dry. We've had just enough water.
I'm talking with Ted Seghesio of Seghesio Family Vineyards. And at this point I said, you hear that a minimal amount of rain contributes to the stressing of the vines, which in turn creates greater flavor and complexity. I asked if that little bit of rain we had contributed to the greater vintages of 2012, 13, and 14.
Yes, we like to stress the vines because we have the opportunity to drip irrigate all of our vineyards, and a lot of our growers do also. And we like to make the vine work, to put it under a very slight stress situation, whether or not we've had enough rainfall or whether or not we just hold off the drip irrigation or just use it judiciously. And we think that theoretically or empirically, when the vines struggle, they're forced to the roots to reach deeper into the ground and hopefully pull up more growth nutrients that will deliver more concentrated flavors to the vine. Yes, it's a lot of theory. We like to make the vine struggle, but it's a balance. At some point they will, especially in the sandier soils. A lot of our vineyards are border the Russian River, where the soils are shallow and lighter, and those really do benefit from a moderate amount of drip irrigation.
And did you have enough water for your irrigation to maintain that nice balance?
We started employing drip irrigation back in the mid-'90s. Before drip irrigation for Seghesio, we would one time during the summer we'd move. We had the 4-inch aluminum pipelines that we could irrigate. Row. They would pick them up, move them 4 rows over, so we could apply overhead irrigation one time during the summertime for most of our vineyards, but a lot of that evaporates into the environment. It wasn't really effective, but that was before drip irrigation. It was labor intensive and not very effective. Drip irrigation, you're able to just isolate small amounts of water into the root system, and we really use a minimal amount of water and get a lot of benefit.
Yeah. And the current and or yet to be released 2014s are also being heralded as a spectacular vintage.
Same reason as 2013. Better selection of growers, because we're always calling out the inferior growers. And 2014 also just enough rain to get us by, and also the diurnal swings of 40 to 50 degrees slow down the rate of ripening, because it was a warm year. I think 15 was the warmest year on record, but 14 was a pretty warm year. 14 was warmer than 13, but just enough nighttime cooling to really make a difference.
Now, we've had some good rain this year with the El Nino. Surely that has to benefit the vines.
Oh, it's going to have a positive effect for sure, because the way we received our rainfall, I think it rained every Sunday, because I'm an avid cyclist, and I like to get out on the roads, and the weekends are the time. And every Sunday it rained half an inch to an inch and a half. And that was beautiful, not that because I couldn't cycle, but we got just enough rainfall to where the soil wasn't saturated. It didn't all run off into the Russian River and flow into the ocean. It came at a really sporadic time and enough where the soil could absorb the moisture and then rain again. It was really the perfect amount of rainfall. We got about 40 inches here locally. I think that's kind of normal, but the sequence which we received it, we think we're done with the rain, but it was really a perfect year for rainfall here in Sonoma County.
Well, Zinfandel is one of my favorite varietals, and especially the Seghesio brand. So I'm really looking forward to another couple of good years of some wonderful Zinfandel.
Yeah, Zinfandel, it's a difficult grape to grow in the vineyard. It grows irregularly, so during the growing season, as the grapes mature, you'll have uneven ripening based on the berry size. So when we go in there during early August to do our veraison thinning, which is a period of time when we can visually look at the clusters and see how many of the berries have colored versus how many berries haven't colored, and we'll drop the clusters that proportionally have green berries on the ground. And that's a tool that we use to even out the variability of Zinfandel on the vine, because it's notorious for, at harvest, producing a cluster of grapes that will have overripe berries or maybe raisins, and ripe berries and underripe berries. And that is the bane of Zinfandel, and no other grape is like that. And to that end, we have a 40-person labor house on site, so our workforce in the vineyards are in the vineyards all the time. They may make 8 or 9 passes through the vineyard every year, ensure that we have quality fruit come to the winery.
It sure takes a lot of hands-on effort and boots in the vineyard, as they say, to make a great vintage. I'm talking with Ted Seghesio of Seghesio Family Vineyards. In the next segment, we discuss how hard it was for his uncle to accept modern-day vineyard practices. That's coming up on The Wine Road. Thanks for listening to On the Wine Road. I'm Jeff Davis. I'm in Healdsburg talking with Ted Seghesio about the Seghesio family's nearly 120 years of family wine growing and winemaking. I recalled a story I'd heard about one of Ted's elders who had a problem understanding the reasoning behind thinning the vines, or dropping the fruit, as they say. Ultimately, it adds to better, more concentrated flavor, but to him, it was like throwing money on the ground.
Yeah, that would have been my great uncle, Uncle Pete. So he grew up during the Depression, so I can appreciate his outlook on making money. But they never dropped a cluster during his tenure, and when we started to do this in the early 90s, he was going to have a fit. So we sent him on the road to sell wine up in Washington State. I don't know how effectively he was doing that, but at least he didn't see us physically dropping fruit on the ground. He saw it afterwards, and he never quite grasped the concept. My dad was pretty upset too, but then I hand him a bottle of wine and said, "Try this." So he got it. He understood the less is more concept in the vineyards, and to this day we employ that every year. And in an uneven year where the weather doesn't cooperate, we might drop a quarter or a third of the fruit on the ground.
That's a lot.
And then we have a sorting table here at the winery, so we can sort further for quality. And we don't like to throw away grapes, but in order to make wines that the consumers want to repeat, want to purchase a second time, it's important that we get evenly ripened fruit.
Funny that you had to send your uncle out of town, though, to be able to institute the program.
We had another vineyard that my great uncle, his wife, managed, and we do the same thing. Although this fruit, it would get sorted in the gondola, so the pickers would pretty much pick everything, and then we'd have two people at the gondola sorting out the bad fruit. Well, she would go behind the gondola as it went down the avenue and throw the sorted fruit back into the tank we just sorted from. So yes, he didn't quite get that either. But and some wineries do it, and some wineries don't. We share vineyards with other wineries that have the same fruit, and we see how they approach Zinfandel, and it's everybody's unique.
Yeah. You can certainly taste it in your bottles, the quality and the depth of flavor and character there. How long have you been winemaker now yourself?
I started in 1979, so when I came back after studying winemaking at University of California, Davis, we were still making bulk wine. So we had a lot of vineyard land, a lot of growers, and handshake agreements with the Gallo folks and the Parmesan and folks like that. But clearly the handwriting was on the wall in the late 70s. We just didn't have the right mix of grapes in our vineyards. And the bulk wine market had really subsided because in the early 70s, the wine boom hit the North Coast, so everything was all about Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Cabernet. We didn't grow any of that, and we had Zinfandel, but we had Carignan, Gamay, French Colombard, and Chenin Blanc, and they weren't just grapes that anybody wanted. So the transition from when I came aboard in 79 to changing the mix of our fruit in the vineyards, to ultimately putting a label on a bottle with a name on it in 1983 was a monumental task because not everybody was on board with that changeover. But we had to happen. We had earmarked a Zinfandel from 1975 for this momentous occasion. We didn't think it'd take us 8 years to get there. So the first Zinfandel we sold with our name on it on the bottle was an 8-year-old Zinfandel that had been aged in redwood tanks for the 8 years. And it was either loved or hated. People didn't really understand it, but we learned a lot since then. But that was the wine we were going to sell. Come hell or high water, that was going to be our first wine. We didn't think it'd take 8 years to get there.
Were you the first winemaker, or were others? Were you just growers before that?
Well, we always made bulk wine. So my grandfather was a winemaker. My dad was a winemaker, and then I was the first winemaker that actually went to school to learn how to make wine. So I've been making wine for 36 years, and I've just got assigned general manager last year. So I moved literally upstairs into the offices, and I'm doing the GM responsibilities. Still overseeing the winemaker. My 12-year assistant, Andy Robinson, became winemaker when I became general manager, and he's been here a long time, and we make a good team.
He's Ted Seghesio of Seghesio Family Vineyards. In a move you hear seemingly more often these days, Seghesio sold to a larger corporation, the Crimson Wine Group, in 2011. I said to Ted, I understand many of the family members were able to stay on following the sale, and I'm always happy to see that arrangement. And then Ted told me something that took me by surprise.
Yeah, oftentimes that story does not end well, because large corporations that buy family wineries oftentimes don't understand why that family became successful, and they seem to zero in on one product and ramp that up, and at the expense of everything else that is esoteric and what makes the winery special. So the sale of the winery was in 2011. Peter negotiated the sale of the winery. My family found out after the fact, and so Peter no longer works here. But today, production is managed by family. So I oversee the winemaking, and my brother David keeps the facility operating, and my brother-in-law Jim Neumiller manages the workforce, and my nephew Ned Neumiller manages the vineyards. So production is still family driven, and that's really important. For myself and for Crimson and Crimson Wine Group, they've given us everything that we could ask for to continue our legacy and everything that I would want to happen as I see it has come to fruition, and it's been a great marriage, far more successful than I would imagine.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it was a bit of a shock then at the beginning, but it has worked out well then.
Yes.
You referred earlier about starting the business in 1895, and not many wineries have made that jump from the late 1800s through Prohibition and then continued on. You're one of the few up here that have survived that. What did your family do during Prohibition?
Yeah, that was a curious time in America's history. So my family bought into a Time Swiss colony 5 months before Prohibition became law. So even though Prohibition, it was in the air, everybody was talking about it, nobody thought they would take our alcohol away from us. Well, my family, probably not the wisest decision we've made over time, but we were owners of the Time Swiss colony as Prohibition became law. But there was a curious law during that period that each household could produce 200 gallons of wine. Mm-hmm. But wineries couldn't make wine, but households could. So a lot of us started shipping fruit by rail all over the United States. And we'd freeze it, put it in a container, freeze it, add SO2, and ship it to as far as Atlanta and New York. And during Prohibition, the grape acreage in Sonoma County increased by 1/3. So go figure.
Yeah.
Wineries couldn't make wine, but we actually planted more grapes during Prohibition than were in the ground. Yeah, from 20,000 acres to 30,000 acres during Prohibition. So for the first 6 years of Prohibition, we actually made more money selling fruit than we had been making before Prohibition, making wine. So it was very lucrative, very lucrative business. But it was temporary. So after about 6 years into Prohibition, there was kind of an anti-Prohibition movement to where, I guess, I don't know, whoever the home winemakers the corks were popping in the basement, and it was getting kind of sloppy out there. So there was an anti-Prohibition movement, so the lucrative business of selling grapes to households wasn't favored upon, and so that business kind of fell off. And it was a difficult time. My family was very frugal. We kept the tanks full of sulfited water that kept the bacteria out of the tanks. We pruned the vineyards, and we waited. We never thought Prohibition would last this long. We had earmarked 50,000 gallons of wine made just before Prohibition that soon enough we'll be able to sell it. Well, in 1927 we had to dump most of that 50,000 gallons into the Russian River. So there was a book written. It was quoted in this book that the day the Russian River ran red.
I hope at least a big party was part of that unfortunate situation.
Yeah, most of that gallonage came from our winery, and the authorities deemed this wine unsuitable or undrinkable, so we had to get rid of it.
That must have tore their heart out. The day the Russian River ran red. That's Ted Seghesio. I have one more segment with Ted. We'll learn about wines other than Zinfandel that they craft, and how his dad has become a social butterfly in his later years. That's next when On the Wine Road continues. It's time to get back out on the wine road. I'm Jeff Davis, and I'm at Seghesio Family Vineyards, talking with winemaker and general manager Ted Seghesio. And I told him in one of my visits to the tasting room a few years ago, I ran into his father. He was just hanging around, telling stories, and was very nice, and it was quite enjoyable to talk with him.
Yeah, so the big secret's out. So Friday afternoons between 3 and 5, my dad, Ed, is the rock star in the tasting room.
To this day, huh?
Yeah, to this day. So he comes in every Friday afternoon, and he's very friendly. He'll tell anybody and everybody the stories that he's got a ton of stories about growing up in this business. And a very amiable guy, and people, they come during those time periods just to see my dad.
Yeah.
So that's a real treat. He turns 90 in September, and he's pretty much seen it all.
Well, as your family has, and if you've made it this far through the challenges you've had, I'm sure you're going to have a continuous bright career and success story. And I wish you guys well, and thank you for your time, Ted.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're rolling out a new wine called Defiant. So my great-grandmother, Angela, she was defiant in her attitude because she essentially ran the company through Prohibition, through the Depression, and she always defied the odds, and she just kept on plugging along, and her defiant nature is part of the reason why we're still making wine today.
That's great. Do you want to talk about any of your other varietals?
Yeah, I could talk about it. Yeah,
I think we got plenty, but squeeze that in maybe.
Yeah, because we have some pretty good time.
Yeah. Well, you've certainly expanded well beyond Zinfandel over the last number of years since you've taken the helm. Tell us about the other varietals, and I know you have some wonderful blends too.
Yeah, we primarily make Zinfandel, but we have the oldest Seghesio vineyard still in production in California. We make 100 cases of wine of an old vine Seghesio fill blend that we call Chianti Station, pretty limited. But from that mother vineyard, we sourced Seghesio clones that we replanted extensively on Rattlesnake Hill in the 1980s. So we have another Seghesio that we call Venom, Rattlesnake Hill, hence Venom. That is it's our best selection of Seghesio that we grow. And we've been making Arnaise, a little white wine from the Piemonte area since the early 90s.
Yeah, not much of that around.
Not much of that around. It's a suitcase clone. I won't expand any further than that. And we just added Vermentino to our portfolio. I think Vermentino's a pretty interesting white grape. There's a slight groundswell of Vermentino here in California. Really nice texture, lively acidity, and really a nice drinking white wine, but different than the Arnaise. And then we also make a pretty exceptional Barbera. We think it's one of the best Barberas in California. And finally, we make a little bit of one of the three noble grapes in Italy, Nebbiolo being the first, Sangiovese being the second, and Aglianico being the third. It's one of the noble grapes in southern Italy. It was a grape that flourished on Mount Vesuvius before it erupted, and Pliny the Elder, who was a wine statesman, declared that Aglianico was the finest wine on this planet, mostly because it grew in the volcanic hills of Mount Vesuvius. So we make a little bit of that too.
Do you have that quote on the bottle?
No, but it probably should be.
Because Pliny the Elder certainly has a reputation around here, not necessarily for wine.
Yeah, I just it's funny you say that. I just went to the Canine Companions for Independence fundraiser last Saturday, and they had a little mini auction. We contributed a lot of wine to the event, and at the end there, they were auctioning off some Pliny the Elder. So I bought a case of Pliny the Elder for a good cause.
Oh.
Wasn't cheap.
How philanthropic of you. I'm sure you'll enjoy it, though.
I will. Every bottle will be very special. Just got to find the right people to drink it with.
Well, as they say, it takes a lot of good beer to make great wine.
Oh, that is a quote. Yeah, that's definitely the case it is, especially when it's September seems to be always the hottest month of the year, always. So we, after work, we have our beer.
Yeah, many winemakers love their beer. What a pleasure to get to know Ted Seghesio. And speaking of Pliny the Elder, I just interviewed Natalie from the Russian River Brewing Company, who makes Pliny the Elder. You'll be hearing her sometime in the next couple of weeks. I really appreciate Ted taking the time to talk with me. Check out the very interesting lineup of wine they make at Seghesio.com. That's Seghesio.com. I'm Jeff Davis. Thanks for listening to this episode of On the Wine Road.